I'm extremely honored to introduce today's commencement speaker, Mike Peters. Prior to assuming the presidency of St. John's in January 2005, Mr. Peters was the executive vice president of the Council on Foreign Relations in New York City. He joined the council in 1995 as senior vice president and chief operating officer. During his tenure, he managed the council's daily operations, oversaw the development of its national program, and for a time managed its research arm as director of studies. Before joining the Council of Foreign Relations, Mr. Peters served for over 27 years in the United States Army, retiring as a colonel. During this time, among other positions, he served as a platoon leader in Vietnam, an assistant professor of economics at West Point, a Soviet military specialist, including duty as an attaché in Moscow, an executive assistant in the office of the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and a battalion commander in the Army Special Operations Command with deployments to Panama and Saudi Arabia. He concluded his military career as the Chief of Staff at the United States Military Academy at West Point. Mr. Peters earned a Bachelor of Science from the United States Military Academy and a Master of Arts in Economics from the University of Washington. But of course, you all really know Mr. Peters as the president of St. John's College. He has served for 10 years as a remarkably steady hand during an extremely challenging period for our nation and for higher education. I am convinced it would have been far tougher for St. John's had Mike not been at the helm. Indeed, our endowment has never been larger. We've had a wildly successful year-long celebration of this campus's 50th anniversary. We now have a building for the Graduate Institute housed in Levin Hall, which is right over there. We built the magnificent Winiarski Student Center at the west end of campus. The Summer Academy for high school students started with Mike's direct leadership. And perhaps most importantly, our clarity of purpose and our path forward have never been clearer. Mike has brought to the job intelligence, quiet purpose, selflessness, good cheer, friendship, as well as an abiding love of what we do at St. John's. I believe I can say that we are all deeply grateful for his service to the college. We are equally grateful to Mike's wife, Eleanor, for her service as well. They have been an extraordinary first couple, and we will miss them when they leave for New York. But know, Mike and Eleanor, you have made friends for life. You will always be welcome as members of this community. And with that, I present to you the president of St. John's College, Mike Peters.
Thank you, Ned. Whenever I'm around an introduction, I've always reminded of an anecdote which some of you heard before. As Ned mentioned, I used to work at the Council on Foreign Relations, and we'd get periodic dignitaries moving through to pontificate and share their wisdom with others. And one time we had the occasion to have Henry Kissinger there, and he was on a panel, and the fellow that was introducing him, after he'd introduced the other two people in the panel, he said, this is Henry Kissinger. He's been a Secretary of State, he's been a National Security Advisor, and a professor at Harvard, and I could go on and on, whereupon Kissinger said, well, do go on and on. Ned, you went on just fine enough there, thank you. So the classes of 2015, I am really honored to have been invited to speak with you today. I mean, this is a real privilege for me, and I appreciate it. But before I begin, I do have one question for you all. Are you ready? All right. Well, when I was in your place more years ago than I care to remember, and you can probably figure it out from some of the stuff that Dean Walpin said, I could never have imagined that I would be speaking at a St. John's College commencement, and I'm very humbled by this opportunity. I also have managed my expectations about what you might take away from this commencement address, because while I can remember who my commencement speaker was, I can't remember a thing he said. But I also realize that I am the only thing standing between you and your diplomas, so I'm not going to go on for too long. As I was sitting in a football stadium awaiting the granting of my degree, it was a pretty different time. The Soviet Empire looked invincible, and containing the spread of communism was the national principal challenge. Tet, the turning point of Vietnam War, happened a few months before I graduated. There was no OPEC and no fracking. Gasoline was about 30 cents a gallon, maybe even cheaper here. The vaccine that helped to eradicate the scourge of measles was universally seen as a good. China was in the midst of a cultural revolution, and India was a symbol of abject poverty rather than a source of software engineers and call centers. I could never have believed the direction my life would take. Moscow, Berlin, Saudi Arabia, New York, Santa Fe never entered my mind. And likewise, none of you can foresee precisely where life will take you in the years ahead. As we've seen, the early years of the 21st century are in many ways more dynamic and more unpredictable than the latter years of the 20th century. A world of tremendous and varied opportunities, but without many of the certitudes. Profound and accelerating change is taking place in virtually every aspect of human endeavor, in science and politics, in economics, international security, particularly with the rise of so-called non-state actors like Al-Qaeda or ISIS, and technological innovation, to name a few. And many of the rules and norms and organizations and institutions we've relied on over the past half-century to manage change seem increasingly inadequate. As the recent earthquakes in Nepal have demonstrated, events a world away can touch us in New Mexico and right here on campus. And events in New Mexico can influence the world. So as you prepare to enter this world, first and foremost, congratulations again. Over your 4 years, well, for a few of you, a couple of years more than that, but that's... You've read, you've thought about, and you've discussed the greatest works by some of the greatest thinkers of all time. And what can I add to those who have used study? Besides, of course, what you've heard me say repeatedly, if you don't smoke, don't start. Right. However, this morning, I have two more fundamental requests or desires, perhaps better said, that I encourage you to keep in mind. They are, first, find something, an idea, a passion, a role that brings purpose or meaning to your life. And second, look for an opportunity to contribute or to serve to others. But before saying a few words about each of these, I want to acknowledge that the step you're about to take can be daunting. You know from your studies that from antiquity, the world has often been chaotic, brutal, and unwelcoming. And unfortunately, the contemporary world has some of this as well. But at the same time, it has been and will be those with imagination, insight, courage, and persistence who overcome these obstacles and help make a better world, fairer and more peaceful. And I want to assure you that you are among them. You can make a positive difference in a difficult world. So as you begin the next phase of your life, remember to call upon the courage you've shown in coming to and graduating from St. John's. Now, some of you say, courage? What courage? Well, I believe it was courageous for you to come to St. John's at a time when the conventional wisdom was increasingly questioning the value of this kind of an education, a liberal education, and instead extolling the virtues of a more directly pre-vocational approach. Despite the babblings of politicians, pundits, and others, you rejected those naysayers and appreciated the inherent value of what you did. You enrolled at St. John's, you persevered, you learned, you grew, and you arrived at this ceremony today. You stood out from the crowd by taking the challenges and seizing the opportunities of St. John's, and I'm sure you will stand out from the crowd wherever you go. You're also armed with your intellect, curiosity, and imagination, which you have honed here at St. John's, and these assets will aid you immensely in meeting whatever you may face. But now let me return to my hope for your pursuing a life of meaning and contribution. First, with meaning. Look for something that has real significance to and for you. Follow your heart and your passion. As some of you and your families have heard me say, with this education, you can do anything you want. I believe it, and I hope you do as well. Now, following your dreams does take courage, but you have, as I say, demonstrated that courage, as well as self-discipline. The way may not always be smooth. There may be setbacks, switchbacks, and even the occasional dead end. Hang in there. Remain open to that still small voice within you, the unexpected opportunities that arise, and the uncharted path that may open before you. Excuse me. Don't be so shackled to a specific course or ideal that you leave no room for the serendipitous or the providential. And for me personally, it was a question that I was asked about 11 years ago. Have you heard of St. John's College in Santa Fe? Santa Fe, I said? I'm really glad I did. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here today. So second, look for an opportunity to contribute to others, to give back, to act on behalf of something or someone greater than yourself. Get involved. Don't be merely a bystander. Now, unfortunately, the attitude of some seems to be epitomized by the selfie. As if you can't find another human being to take a picture of you? Now, I recognize for many it's just an innocent convenience. But at the same time, it strikes me it's a reflection of the trend, unfortunate, to worship, to glorify, and to pursue celebrity. The goal to always be the center of attention, to act as if the world revolves around each of us. This, of course, is not so, and nor should it be. We can and we should be part of what makes our unique universe possible and worthwhile, but as contributors, not merely as beneficiaries. Your contribution doesn't have to be earth-shaking. In fact, some of the most significant contributions are small, personal, and one-to-one. It can be in your family, in your community, in your workplace or vocation, your nation, and for some, maybe even the world. But you don't need a large stage. The greatest good is often accomplished in small ways. As Jesus reminded his disciples in the Gospel of Mark, whoever would be the greatest among you shall be your servant. Use your talents and skills as a platform for service rather than a pedestal for power. Now, in seeking meaning and contribution, there is one thing of which I am certain. Your education and learning should not and will not end when you leave campus today. Your time here was only the beginning, a prelude. After all, this ceremony is known as commencement. If you're going to find meaning for yourself and contribute to others, you must continue to grow intellectually, to foster your curiosity and imagination, and to call upon your courage and self-discipline. I also ask you to continue to challenge your assumptions and move beyond observation and description to thought and to action. And perhaps, most importantly, find a way to feed your soul as well as your mind and your body. Some of this can come through a vacation or a workplace. Some of you may be called to be educators, helping future generations learn and grow. Others of you may be called to business or public service or the professions or other nonprofit endeavors or the arts. But regardless of your vocational calling, each of us is called to be a citizen. And as citizens, we need to be constantly learning if we are to engage in thoughtful and informed debate, and if we are to help formulate imaginative and workable solutions for the issues that face our communities, our country, and our world. But meaning and contribution frequently come in other aspects of life, and in family, for example. After all, we spend the greater part of our lives outside the workplace, and it is often in these areas where we find our greatest personal reward and our greatest opportunity for service. But in whatever you do it with integrity, and remember the golden rule: do unto others as you would have them do unto you. In this regard, I recall the simple guidance of one of my first bosses: be kind. Treating everyone with respect is one of the most fundamental principles of leadership and of any healthy relationship. So as you go forward today, I hope you will pursue something that brings real meaning and purpose to you, and be open to the unexpected. Look for opportunities to contribute to something greater than yourself, and do so with integrity and respect for others. Be kind, and continue to learn, to foster your curiosity and imagination, and to call upon the courage and self-discipline you exhibited in attending and graduating from St. John's. It will give you sustenance as you search for meaning and a way to contribute. Congratulations again on achieving this milestone today. Savor it and celebrate it. The faculty, staff, and your fellow alumni of St. John's are immensely proud of you. And I am pleased to say that Mrs. Peters and I just learned that we are becoming honorary alumni of St. John's College in the class of 2015. So we're forever going to be classmates. So we look forward to following your journey of meaning and contribution. The world is waiting for your energy, your imagination, your creativity, and your contribution. Thank you again from the bottom of my heart for the privilege of addressing you today. Oh, and by the way, don't smoke. God bless you all.